before skyscrapers touched the clouds, before the internet connected the world. There was an America built on dust, dreams, and determination. Today, we step back in time, to the olden US era, a time when life was simpler, but far from easy. A quieter one. Built not on machines, but on calloused hands, slow wagons, and unbroken will. An America of candlelight, horse hooves, and handwritten letters. A time when survival was the only dream, and the dreamers built a nation. This is the Forgotten America. A journey through time, through the hardship, hope, and haunting silence of the olden US era. Let's start at the very beginning, Jamestown, Virginia, 1607. When 104 English settlers arrived at the shores of Virginia, they had dreams of gold, glory, and easy wealth. What they got instead was one of the most brutal survival experiences in American history. Here's what they faced immediately. Swampy, mosquito-infested land-contaminated water sources, brutal summer heat and humidity, no experience with farming or wilderness survival, hostile relations with the Powhatan Confederacy. Within the first 7 months, more than half of the colonists were dead. By the winter of 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time, things got even worse. Of the 500 colonists present, only 60 survived. Historical accounts suggest that some settlers resorted to eating rats, snakes, leather from their boots, and there's even evidence of cannibalism. One colonist was executed for killing and eating his pregnant wife. This wasn't the romantic adventure they had signed up for. Why did they stay? You might wonder, why didn't they just go home? Well, several reasons. They'd invested everything to get there. The Virginia Company kept sending more settlers and supplies. Some were indentured servants with no choice, and eventually, they discovered tobacco. Tobacco became Virginia's salvation. John Rolfe, yes, the same guy who married Pocahontas, developed a strain of tobacco that Europeans loved. Suddenly, Virginia had a cash crop, and the colony's fortune turned around. The Plymouth Colony. Shift to slightly more hopeful music. In 1620, a different group of colonists, the Pilgrims, landed at Plymouth, Massachusetts. Their story is equally harsh. They arrived in November, the worst possible time. That first winter, half of them died. They lived on the Mayflower ship for months because they couldn't build shelter fast enough. The famous First Thanksgiving in 1621 wasn't some idyllic celebration, it was a harvest festival shared with the Wampanoag people, who had taught the Pilgrims how to survive. Without Squanto and the Wampanoag, Plymouth would have gone the way of several failed colonies before it. Colonial life takes root. Music transitions to more stable tone. By the 1630s and 1640s, more colonies were established. Massachusetts Bay Colony, 1630, Puritans seeking religious freedom. Maryland, 1634, a Catholic refuge. Connecticut, 1636, Rhode Island, 1636, founded by Roger Williams after being expelled from Massachusetts for religious tolerance. Each colony had its own character, laws, and challenges. But some things were universal. Daily life. You woke up at dawn, worked until dusk, your entire family worked, no exceptions. Children as young as 5 or 6 had chores. Most people were illiterate. Religion dominated daily life. Housing. 1 or 2 room houses, thatched roofs, later replaced with wooden shingles, dirt floors covered with straw or rushes, small windows covered with oiled paper. Glass was expensive, everyone slept in the same room, often in the same bed. By the mid-1600s to early 1700s, the colonies were becoming more established. The population was growing through both immigration and births. Let's break down what life actually looked like during this century. A day in the life of a colonial family. Let me paint you a picture. You're a colonial farmer in Massachusetts in 1700. Early morning, 4 to 6 a.m. you wake up before dawn. Your wife is already up, rekindling the fire from the embers that stayed warm overnight. She starts making breakfast, probably cornmeal mush or porridge, maybe some salted pork if you're lucky. Your children wake up and immediately start their chores. The boys fetch water from the well, girls help with cooking and milking the cow, older children tend to the animals. You eat breakfast standing up or sitting on simple stools. No fancy dining table. The whole meal takes maybe 15 minutes because there's work to do. Morning to afternoon, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now the real work begins. Depending on the season. Spring. Plowing fields with oxen or horses, planting corn, wheat, vegetables, repairing winter damage to buildings and fences. Summer. Weeding crops, constantly cutting hay, tending livestock, preserving early harvest. Fall. Harvesting everything, storing food for winter, slaughtering animals, making candles and soap, cutting firewood, lots and lots of firewood. Winter. Repairing tools and equipment, spinning wool, weaving cloth, making clothes and shoes, cutting ice from ponds for preservation, feeding livestock. Your wife and daughters are equally busy. Cooking, 3+ hours daily over an open fire, making butter and cheese, preserving food through salting, smoking, pickling, spinning thread, sewing all the family's clothes by hand, making soap and candles, caring for children, tending the kitchen garden. Evening, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Supper is similar to breakfast, simple and quick. Maybe some stew, bread, vegetables, beer or cider. After supper, the family might do lighter tasks by firelight. The father might read from the Bible, children might practice their letters. If the family is literate, some conversation, but everyone's exhausted. By 8 or 9 p.m., everyone's in bed. You sleep on a straw mattress, covered with wool blankets. In winter, you might share the bed with your spouse and younger children just for warmth. What did people eat? Let's talk food in detail, because it's fascinating and very different from today. Staples. Corn, made into cornbread, porridge, pudding, hominy bread, when wheat was available, salted meat, pork, beef, sometimes fish, beans and peas, root vegetables, turnips, carrots, parsnips, potatoes. After 1700s, dairy, milk, butter, cheese, apples, mostly for cider. What was rare or expensive? Sugar, incredibly expensive, used sparingly. Spices, black pepper was a luxury. Fresh meat, except at slaughter time. Citrus fruits, almost never available. Coffee and tea, expensive imports. Beverages, everyone drank beer, cider, or milk. Water was often unsafe, so even children drank small beer, a weak beer with low alcohol content. Adults drank stronger beer, hard cider, and rum. Colonial society had a clear hierarchy. Top tier. Large landowners and plantation owners, wealthy merchants, government officials, clergy, especially in New England. Middle class. Small farmers who owned their land, successful craftsmen and tradesmen, shop owners. Lower class. Tenant farmers who rented land, laborers, servants, sailors. Bottom. Indentured servants, bound to work for 4 to 7 years, enslaved Africans, no rights whatsoever. The rise of slavery. Somber music. We need to address this directly. Slavery became entrenched in colonial America, particularly in the South. The first enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia in 1619. By the early 1700s, slavery was legal in all 13 colonies, though it was most intensive in the South, where large-scale agriculture demanded massive labor. Life for enslaved people was brutal. Owned as property with no rights, families separated and sold, brutal physical punishment, forced to work from sunrise to sunset, inadequate food, clothing, and shelter. Any resistance met with violence. The wealth of many colonial plantations was built entirely on enslaved labor. This is a fundamental part of early American history that can't be ignored or sugarcoated. Colonial towns and cities. Not everyone lived on farms. Towns and cities were developing. Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Charleston were becoming significant urban centers. Town life included cobblestone streets, or muddy dirt roads, taverns as social centers, markets and shops, churches as the center of community, town meetings for governance, craftsmen's workshops. Urban life was different but not necessarily easier. No sewage systems, waste in the streets, fire hazards, entire neighborhoods could burn, disease spread quickly in crowded conditions, crime and disorder. Education and literacy. Education varied wildly. New England, Puritans valued literacy to read the Bible. Massachusetts required towns to establish schools. Middle colonies, mix of religious and private schools. Southern colonies, education mainly for the wealthy, poor and enslaved had no access. Most education was. Boys learned reading, writing, basic math. Girls learned reading, basic writing, and domestic arts. Children of the wealthy might learn Latin, Greek, philosophy. Most people completed only a few years of schooling. Medicine and health concern. Music. Tone. Healthcare in colonial America was primitive and often dangerous. Common ailments. Smallpox killed thousands. Yellow fever, malaria, dysentery, cholera, tuberculosis. Medical treatment. Bloodletting, removing blood to balance humors, purging, inducing vomiting or diarrhea. Herbal remedies, some helpful, many useless. Surgery without anesthesia. Physicians often had little training. Mortality rates. Infant mortality. 1 in 3 children died before age 5. Childbirth was extremely dangerous for mothers. Life expectancy, 35 to 40 years on average. However, if you survived childhood, you might live into your 60s. Religion and community. Religion was huge in colonial life. It wasn't just Sunday service, it permeated everything. New England Puritans. Strict moral codes. Church attendance mandatory. Punished for swearing, missing church, adultery. Believed in predestination. Salem witch trials, 1692, mass hysteria led to 20 executions. Other colonies. Quakers in Pennsylvania, more tolerant Anglicans in Virginia, more formal Catholics in Maryland. Growing diversity of religions by 1700s. Church was also social center. Community gatherings, news and information, courtship opportunities, business dealings. Imagine living through the Revolutionary War. Here's what ordinary people experienced. Military action near your home. Armies marching through your town requisitioning your food, animals, and supplies. Your home might be used as headquarters or hospital. You might wake up to find a battle happening in your fields. Economic hardship. Continental currency became nearly worthless. Inflation skyrocketed. Normal goods became scarce. Many farms abandoned or destroyed. Disease and death. More soldiers died of disease than combat. Smallpox swept through camps. Dysentery, typhus, and pneumonia killed thousands. Women's roles. Women stepped up massively. Ran farms and businesses while men fought. Made clothes and supplies for soldiers. Some disguised themselves as men to fight. Camp followers. Women who traveled with armies, cooking, nursing, doing laundry. Spies passed information to Continental forces. The Continental Army struggles. Let's be clear, the Continental Army was a mess, especially at the start. Problems. Soldiers poorly trained. Terrible supply system. Soldiers served short terms and went home. Little money to pay soldiers. Inadequate food, clothing, weapons. Desertions were common. Valley Forge, winter 1777 to 1778. This is the iconic suffering of the Revolution. Washington's army camped at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania for the winter. Conditions. No proper shelters initially. Soldiers built log huts. Inadequate food, sometimes just fire cake, flour and water. No warm clothing. Many soldiers had no shoes. Wrapped feet in rags. Bloody footprints in the snow became a symbol. 2,000 soldiers died from disease and exposure. Yet they survived. Baron von Steuben arrived and trained them into a professional army. They emerged in spring as a real fighting force. Major battles and turning points. Saratoga, 1777. American victory convinced France to enter the war as America's ally. This was huge. French money, supplies, and navy turned the tide. Monmouth, 1778 showed the Continental Army could stand toe-to-toe with British regulars. Yorktown, 1781 the decisive battle. Washington, with French support, trapped British General Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. After a siege, Cornwallis surrendered. The war was essentially over, though fighting continued sporadically. The Treaty of Paris, 1783. Britain officially recognized American independence. The new United States gained all territory east of the Mississippi River, recognition as a sovereign nation, fishing rights off Canada. The impossible had happened. A ragtag collection of colonies defeated the world's most powerful empire. The cost. Human cost. 25,000 American soldiers died, thousands more wounded or disabled, unknown numbers of civilians killed, Native Americans suffered greatly as land grabbing intensified. Economic cost. War debts crippled the new nation economy in shambles, infrastructure destroyed, years of recovery needed. So there you have it, the real story of early America, from colonial survival to the birth of a new nation. What should we take away? 1. It was incredibly hard. Life in early America demanded toughness we can barely imagine today. No safety nets, no modern medicine, no easy solutions. People lived with constant hardship, danger, and uncertainty. 2. It was revolutionary. Despite all the problems, early Americans created something genuinely new, a democratic republic based on Enlightenment ideals. Imperfectly applied, yes, but revolutionary nonetheless. 3. It was deeply flawed. We can't ignore the contradictions. A nation founded on freedom that enslaved millions, ideals of equality while denying rights to women, promises of liberty while seizing Native American lands. These contradictions shaped American history for centuries to come. 4. Ordinary people built it. History books focus on Washington, Jefferson, Franklin. But America was built by millions of ordinary people. Farmers who cleared forests and planted crops, women who kept households functioning, craftsmen who built towns and cities, enslaved people whose forced labor created wealth, immigrants seeking better lives. 5. The past shapes the present. Understanding early America helps us understand modern America. Why certain values persist, where our institutions come from, how inequalities were baked in from the start, why change is so difficult. The people of early America weren't heroes or villains. They were human beings trying to survive, build lives, and create something lasting. They succeeded in some ways, failed in others, and left us a complicated legacy. Final thoughts. If you made it this far, wow, thank you. This was a deep dive, and I appreciate you sticking with me through all 30 minutes. What surprised you most about early American life? What do you wish I covered more? Let me know in the comments. I love discussing history with you all. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss future deep dives into history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.